Fellow viewers, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, wherever you're watching us from. Thank you very much for having this time with us this evening, this morning, this afternoon. And this is the interview brought to you by the ACN. Fellow Ambalanders, how many more lives must be lost? How many more lives must be lost before the world decides that Ambazonians' lives also matter? For over 7 years, the people of Ambazonia, formerly the Southern Cameroons, British Southern Cameroons, have endured what can only be described as a slow-burning genocide. This is what the people of Ambazonia have endured over the years. A conflict born not from war, but from betrayal. Betrayal that began in 1961, when two colonial powers, Britain and France, decided our fate without our full consent. A failed union, an unrecognized state, a people abandoned. But today, fellow viewers, it's no longer a history that oppresses us. No, it's no longer history. Rather, it is silence. Yes, I said it is silence. What do I mean? Villages have been burned to the ground with families in them. Children shot in classrooms in cold blood. Women raped in front of their children. Priests, teachers, farmers turned into targets of La République du Cameroun. Over 70,000 people have been killed in Ambazonia. More than 1.5 internally displaced. Over 200,000 and above are refugees in Nigeria and beyond. Dear viewers, these are not just numbers I'm talking about. We are talking about people, women and children, and yet the war remains unmoved. How do we describe this, if not a silent genocide? The question we are asking today is, where is the United Nations? When schools are raised with students still in them, where is the United Nations? Where is the African Union? When Cameroon bombs entire villages with women and children still in these villages, grappling with their lives, struggling to survive, where are the sanctions that we hear about every day? The resolutions, the summits, like we see in the case of Ukraine, like we see in the case of Israel, like we see in the case of Sudan and many others that we can't continue to name. Where are these sanctions? Where are the summits? Where are the actions taken? Why does Ambazonia not receive the same urgency and attention like others do, despite the multiple reports from reputable human rights organizations like the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Norwegian Refugee Council? We even had independent researchers report about the killings in Ambazonia and the atrocities committed by Cameroon and its brute military in Ambazonia. The Oxford report that revealed in depth of what is happening in Ambazonia. Where is the UN? Where is the United Nations? Where are all the bodies that we hear every day that promote human rights and human rights protection? Dr. Cho Lucas Ayaba, a voice for Ambazonians' right to exist, is being held in Norway. And guess what? Norway is a country that prides itself in human rights, always having the Nobel Prize for human rights. And yet today, Norway is an accomplice in silencing dissents, in silencing human rights defenders, silencing justice defenders. Why the regime of Cameroun tightened its grip, and Paul Biya, at the age of 91, ladies and gentlemen, plans yet another sham of election, still refusing to acknowledge the crisis in Ambazonia, even when he feels the pain within its economy. Meanwhile, France, the puppet that master behind Biya's decades-long dictatorship in Africa, and we all know he's becoming the longest-serving president in Africa, continues to provide diplomatic cover for Cameroon, continue to shield the case of Ambazonia being brought up at the very top, at the level of the UN Security Council, because it enjoyed the privilege of the Big Five. An international cooperation, and yet continue to siphon Ambazonia's resources, leaving our people in destitute. And now, suddenly, the international community wants to talk. Suddenly, calls are being made for unity meetings, for dialogues, and so on. But where were you when mothers buried their sons, dug graves by themselves, which is considered a taboo and abomination in Ambazonia for women to dig graves and bury their own children? Where were you when entire villages vanished in smokes? We called on the war, not for pity, but for justice, for recognition, for accountability. This is not a tribal war. This is not an internal affair, as some people call it. No, it is not an internal affair, because Ambazonia and Cameroun are two separate countries. So you cannot term the Ambazonian conflict an internal affair. This is a people fighting for their right to exist, their right to self-determination. Ambazonians will not disappear. And if the war continues to look away, history will judge not just the perpetrators of what is happening to our mothers, our women, our fathers, our youths, but those who remain silent. And I trust that to those that are listening, you will make a decision today not to be those that remain silent in the face of adversity. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been 8 years since the brutal killing of our people and the continuous killing of our people. There's been reports of the worst forms of human rights violations in Ambazonia. But the thing is, the gravity of it has not yet been spoken. People do not know how grievous and gruesome the human rights situation in Ambazonia is. Today, I decided to bring with me the Secretary for Human Rights for the Ambazonian Governing Council, an expert in this field, who over the years has documented the severe violations, human rights violations, the gruesome killing, the atrocities, the systematic torture, the rape, the enforced disappearances that continue to happen within our communities, perpetrated by Cameroun. He has documented this vividly, and today he's here to expose to the world the gravity of the war in Ambazonia and the human rights situation in Ambazonia. So with me in the studio, I have the honor to bring to you Mr. Akonson Raymond, who is the head of the Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs of the Ambazonian Governing Council. Mr. Raymond, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, PS. That was a very heartwarming monologue you had there a few short minutes ago. It is my pleasure to be here to expose, people know already, but to reiterate to the Ambazonian people and the world community, the kind of mayhem, massacre, genocide that Cameroun currently perpetrates in Ambazonia. So again, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much and welcome once again. So I will just go straight because I don't want us to waste much time on this. We want the world to hear us, and we want them to hear us and hear us fast. So, Mr. Conson, before we dive into the gravity of what we are facing, right? I want us to begin on a personal note. When you reflect on the 8 years of this conflict, what moment has haunted you the most and why?
I think that's a very difficult question. I would say every moment has really haunted me. You get up maybe at midnight or you shake on your bed at 4 a.m. and then you're getting messages from ground zero, like the incident that just happened in northern Ambazonia, in Bamenda, where my department is still investigating this. And for the records, the Department for Human Rights and Humanitarian Services of the Ambazonia Governing Council, we have staff that works 24 on 7. We have a department that is manned by, Ambazonians. They work 24 on 7. They research war crimes that Cameroun is committing in Ambazonia, and they report that. And we have a website, www.agovc.org, where on a real-time basis, we upload those atrocities. Yeah, so to your question, I think every moment we cannot just state about Gabo or situations where they kill more than 10 in cold blood, but every bit of situation bothers me. If you think of, women living in the forest without sanitary pads, if you think of Martha, a 5-year-old or 3-year-old baby in I think Mutengene being killed, or Moyoka, sorry, being killed in cold blood. If you think of baby Diale in Boya, who was going to school, shot in the head, all of those moments, no specific one, every bit of them, haunts me. You wake up at night, you get these images, you know, you say, but what is going on? Where is the humanity of man? So, to your question, every moment of war crime, every moment of Cameroon's atrocities in Ambazonia, it's something that would, keep everybody up at night, except the nonagenarian in Yaoundé.
That's correct. Okay, thank you very much. I wanted you to have that because when you imagine it yourself, you feel the pain of every other person that is on the ground and every other family that has lost one or two in this war. And it also gives us, even the viewers, a moment to reflect and ask themselves this same question. So I am very glad that you gave me a detailed answer on that on a very personal note. So the Ambazonian Governing Council's Human Rights Report documents over 334 war crimes from 2016 to now, which I know you still have the first quarter's report that you're still updating, with a shocking 66 incidents in 2024 alone, the highest ever recorded. So, what patterns are emerging from these violations? What do they reveal about the intent of Cameroon's regime?
That's a very good question. You said it, and I was about to comment on this post the monologue you gave.
Right.
The intent is very obvious, very big capital underlined: genocide. So genocide is currently going on in Ambazonia. This is not our words, but these are the words of Genocide Watch. It is an international not-for-profit organization that is led by Dr. Gregory Stanton. He warned about the Rwanda genocide, before the world even called it so. And now he is warning about what is going on in Ambazonia. So it's not my opinion. It's not your opinion. It's not just the
Right.
opinion of the Ambazonia Governing Council, right? It is the opinion of independent, organizations like Genocide Watch, who have started calling this thing out. So yeah, to
Right.
your question, this is genocide, pure and simple. Anybody who is affiliated to the country called Ambazonia, you mean nothing in the eyes of Cameroon. Cameroon just wants to wipe you out. And there is also ethnic cleansing that is going on. They want to wipe out every Ambazonian male. Remember, shamelessly, the nonageniarian of Etudi in Paris echoed that their ambition, their strategy was to assimilate Ambazonia. Many people
Right.
take the word assimilation very lightly.
Right.
Assimilation means I am going to eradicate your culture. I am going to eradicate what you represent as a people and then force you to become my culture, force you to
Right.
become an embodiment of what I believe in. That's the meaning of assimilation. They wanted to wipe
Exactly.
out completely
Erasing your
the Ambazonian way of life, right?
right.
So
Right.
that is their precedent telling the world, yet nobody is doing anything about it. So it is genocide, it is ethnic cleansing, pure and simple.
That's true. And that video of him trying with Mo Ibrahim, trying to say, "Oh, we really wanted to assimilate them, but it's been very difficult for us to do it." And the truth is that they will never succeed to do it because we are a people with our own identity and with our own uniqueness. So thank you very much for bringing that up, HHS. And again, according to and if the studio can bring me the pie chart that I sent in for this particular statistics on this on what has been happening back home, I would love that. If you can pull out the pie chart for 2024 up to 20 from 2026 up to 2024, that will be really helpful. While we continue, Mr. Raymond, according to the records of the HHS department, the Human Rights Department, September and October alone account for over 20% of the recorded crimes in Ambazonia. What is the significance of these peak periods? Are these attacks coordinated to avoid international media circle or diplomatic security? I don't understand why these two
Yeah,
particular months.
that's a very interesting question, and I'm happy that you have those statistics from our department. If you look at things very well, not only September and October, you also
Yeah,
have those crimes are at their peak around May as well.
right,
We did not see most of it in this past February, but February, May, September, and October, based on our statistics. Remember, we, document these war crimes on a near real-time basis. So as we speak, you have people of my department. They are, scanning through and seeing all of these crimes, and they're documenting. So, like you said, September, October, and I've added May and February. What happens now? These are very significant periods in the lives of Ambazonians in terms of specific historic events that take place. For example, in September, we see that early September, usually the first week or the second week of September, La Republique school curriculum starts for that year. The school year begins. And we in Ambazonia, we say, we are not part of La République du Cameroon, and therefore we do not subject ourselves to Cameroon's, educational curriculum. And the fighters on the ground and Ambazonians on the ground, they prefer to sit home. They say, they are saying that we do not recognize you, we do not recognize your educational program in Ambazonia. So we have our own schedule that is not in sync with your schedule. And
Right.
so fighters go out there and try to ensure that the La Republique educational curriculum is not implemented in Amazonia, and Cameroon want to fight back. They want to fight back as much as they can, and then you see situations where they go into neighborhoods, pull out kids, and try to force them to school, and cause these kids to be some kind of a human shield for them. And because they do this in September, we see that escalation in those war crimes. October, when Ambazonians are saying that, what, this is when we have our independence, right? And so people go out to jubilate for their independence. Our fighters do parades and all that. So because of that, you have situations where Cameroon, with all the failure, try to suppress that, and
Right.
so there's usually a standoff between Ambazonian forces and Cameroon occupation forces. And who is the victim? Most of the times, when Cameroon forces are given a bloody nose, when they are given an uppercut on the
Right.
battlefield, what do? They pour that frustration and anger on the civilian population,
Right.
and that is another reason why we see that pike in the month of October. And then of
Right.
course February, our people resist them against 11th of February celebrations, so-called fake youth day, and then
Yeah.
20th of May as well. So these are months where we get a significant a spike in war crimes of Cameroon in Ambazonia.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much for that detailed explanation. At least anybody that sees the chat will also have a better understanding with you giving that detailed explanation. And I was just about to ask a question which you've indirectly answered in this one, because based on the report that I saw from your department, you see that Cameroon targets on schools, market, and places of worship during a particular times, And so I was wondering, is it that they have a particular message they're trying to pass across to us? Is this that because at the end of the day, you see that non-combatants, civilians, are bearing the burns of the war. So is Cameroon's specific targets to these places, markets, places, schools, places of worship, and all of this? Is it a message they're trying to pass to us?
Cameroon does not understand the meaning of the Geneva Convention. They do
Okay.
not understand that certain places, civilian inhabited places, are a no go area in times of war. They don't understand that. When the war started, my department rallied a few people of stamina within the AGOVC, and we came up with a document, and that document is Charter for the Protection of Civilians in or during war times. And my department also advised the War Council to come up with an ADF code of conduct, which they did. As I speak to you, many international organizations, because of the non-disclosure we have, I'm not going to be naming names. We've worked with those international organizations, but with time we'll start naming those names. So we've worked with them, to fine tune these documents, which are meet international standards. So we are very aware that in times of war, we need to protect the civilian population. In the contrary, in fact, with all manner of callousness, Cameroon, we have seen them on video beheading people, beheading civilians. We have seen them on video burning down civilian homes. We have seen them burning down markets, people's sources of livelihood. They gather people's motorcycles, burn them, go to farms and burn them in what we call scorched earth policy. Whether you call it a scorched earth policy or not, so long as you're targeting civilians, that is in flagrant violation of the rules of war and punishable in international law. So Cameroon's hands are very dirty. Cameroon has committed war crimes to the extent that we are very embarrassed with the international community. Nobody is holding Cameroon accountable. But Cameroon needs to understand that post-war, they will be held accountable. They will pay for every war crime they're currently committing in Ambazonia. So to answer your question, yes, Cameroon does not understand. What they are doing is very systemic. It's an order from their administrators to wreak havoc and mayhem on civilian populations so that the civilian listen to their modus operandi, their rationale for doing that. The rationale for doing that is, let us tire the civilian population to say, you know what, we are really tired of this. But guess what? Doing that instead makes our people believe that, oh my goodness, is this the guy who said this is my brother treating me this way? Never again. Never again. So their actions have really caused us to believe that there is no way we can cohabit in one country. We can cohabit in one entity called a country. Never again. So their actions are instead, they are shooting themselves in the leg, and at the same time, they are committing war crimes by targeting civilian populations because, one, Cameroon has never respected international law.
That's correct. Thank you very much for that. That is very explicit, and everybody that knows Cameroon knows that they have no clue what it means. They are signatories to many international covenants and conventions, but they do not respect the terms and conditions of those international treaties that they are signatories to. And it's a shame that despite all of this, the international community still open its arms and welcome them at the corridors of power. So, but Mr. Raymond, I wanted to, so you can take your time to explain this to me clearly. We have conflicting numbers when it comes to like the number of people killed in Ambazonia. We have international organizations like Human Rights Watch giving us figures like 6,000, others giving us figures like 8, others giving us 3,000. But your department has documented over 70,000. That is staggering, and that is so alarming to think that over 70,000 people have been killed and they are still being killed, because this is a report you presented by September of 2024, and we are already in April of 2025, and people are still dying. I'm asking, why do we have these uneven numbers? And is it that the international community has not been giving the world the real numbers, or why do you have these numbers and their numbers are completely different?
They are very lazy to research, and they do not think that Ambazonia, a good number of, if you see, again, they are lazy to research, pure and simple. For example, you find a so-called international journalist wants to report on Ambazonia. They go online, they see figures that were reported in, say, January 2017 or June 2017. And they grab that figure of, they have a magic figure of 6,000 that never goes up. So they have that figure. That figure has never gone up, right? So they are lazy to
Yeah.
research. They go grab that figure and then insert it in their article, right? So
Right.
it's not the international community that tells Ambazonians who has been killed. It's not supposed to
Right.
be so. It's we, the Amazonian people. We know ourselves. We know our neighborhoods. We know our families, our relatives, and we cannot account for 70,000 people.
That's right.
We're looking for
So
a
this is
neighbor.
based
We're
on
looking for a neighbor.
eyewitness reports.
Yeah, based on eyewitness report and
Right.
based on the work that my department is doing on the ground. If you were to ask a journalist, say in DW Africa, like this La Republique lady called Mimi Fufu, she has a magic figure of 6,000. She's not on the ground, right?
Yeah.
But my
Mhm.
department has people on the ground who get these figures on a near real-time basis. I just gave you a figure of 12 people who
Yeah.
were murdered in cold blood a few days ago. And
Right.
we're not rushing to publish that, but we want to really ascertain what those true figures are. It may go to 13 or 14, whatever, but we want to get those real facts and we document. So
Okay. Thank you very much.
they are not interested in getting the right figures. If they were interested in getting the right figures, they would contact those who are actually documenting those facts.
Right. Right. That is very, very important. I really wanted you to bring out that point because sometimes people will say, oh, it's because the number has not reached a threshold. And I ask myself, how many people even have to die before it reaches a certain threshold? What do you qualify or call a threshold? And I'm glad to know that these are data collected within our communities, house to house, families to families, and eyewitnesses. And there's still a lot that cannot still be accounted for, those that were buried in mass graves and all of those. So I'm glad that your department is putting this together and for the world to know exactly what is going on. So we are here talking about them. Despite the staggering numbers that you've talked about over the last 8 years of relentless advocacy, the world remains perpetually silent on the case of Ambazonia. Why do you think that the international community ignore Ambazonia for a long time? Why conflicts like Ukraine and Palestine dominate global attention and receive urgent diplomatic interventions? In your own understanding, why is this so?
This is a very um, passionate topic I like to talk about.
Right.
Um, to be honest with you, the international system is extremely corrupt, and I say that with every bit of energy I have in me. The international community is hypocritical. They are extremely corrupt, and I came to this conclusion. When the war started,
Yeah,
we all have never been in this kind of a situation before, right? That is number
exactly.
one. So people cannot pretend that they knew more than others. We've learned and grown in the process, right?
Right.
And I will not blame I will not blame the SCNC back in the day when they prescribed what they called um, the force of argument to use where they wrote, theses, hundreds and thousands of pages, and sent to some United Nations or the State Department of the United States, many other big powerhouses in the world, they write these documents and send. P.S. Nobody reads them.
That's right.
Nobody reads these things. And that's the mistake we made all over the years. From the 70s of Gurjit Dinka to this moment, we have squandered like 40, 50 years fighting. We've squandered it all. And the AGOPC came to the realization that the force of argument doesn't hold in this very, very corrupt world. What holds is the disruption of the interest of these, Westerners who've come to soak Africa dry. And they think, especially in the case of Cameroun and Ambazonia, the French, for instance, think that they are going to use Cameroun as proxy to continue their colonialist agenda, where they pilfer our resources and take to France. So that's the number one watchword: interest. They are selfish. They don't care about you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about anybody. Even the Ukraine you talk about, do you think they really care about the Ukrainians? They care about themselves first.
That's correct.
Okay, now ask yourself, why are all the torches pointing at DRC? Your guess is as good as mine.
That's right.
Because they have discovered diamond mines, gold mines in the DRC. And everybody wants a cut out of it. So with the case of Cameroun and Ambazonia, they know that they have a good player that they are using in Cameroun to pilfer Ambazonia and hand that over to them. We have not been able, at this moment of the revolution, to cause enough noise to call the attention of the international community. Unfortunately, we've not been able to do that.
That's right.
And
so
yeah, and so ask yourself, why would, say for example, in the Central African Republic, you hear that Seleka rebels have cut half of the country and held it hostage, and the next minute you hear the United Nations Security Council meeting in extraordinary session, let's solve this problem.
Yeah.
They're calling for rebel leaders and so on and so forth, because they threaten your interest.
Exactly.
Yeah, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I wanted to, so you can just conclude it with what you were trying to say. And I was just wondering, do you think that it's because of the international silence and also its neutrality that has embodied Cameroon to escalate this atrocity? Do you think if the international community, had responded earlier or had done something earlier, this would have really,
Absolutely.
scaled down what is going on in Ambazonia?
Absolutely.
So Cameroun has been praying based on the silence of the international community.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That impeccable silence has really emboldened Cameroun to continue, unchecked with their actions in ground zero. They know if they kill, they have the back of the French. If they bomb the entire Ambazonia, they have the back of the French, right? And so, getting into diplomacy in the past few years, I came to understand that it's just simply a quid pro quo game.
Yeah.
What do you have for me? And I help you. Unfortunately, that is what is going on.
Right.
And as part of the diplomatic team for the AGOPC, We're having a lot of those conversations. Unfortunately, it's
Exactly.
turning out that way. But, you know, um, that is what is going on. I don't want that. There's certain things that I don't want to say right now.
No, you
So,
will say it. Let's say something. Talking about diplomacy, since you've engaged on that topic, I just want to bring this very quick. In recent months, AGOFC has really scored major diplomatic engagements, including conversations, especially with the Trump administration, right? Something many liberation movements have not achieved for many, many years, knowing who Donald Trump is. So why are these significant achievements not amplified in global diplomatic spaces? And why is it that it has not really moved a lot of like the African Union to want to engage in the issue of Ambazonia?
the African Union is non-existent. The
Right.
African
That's
Union
good.
is the African Union is I think that's the best word. I'm looking for another. I'm looking for a more
A
soothing word.
toothless
But the
bulldog.
African, not even that. A toothless bulldog is even better than the African Union. They are non-existent, and so they just sheep behind whatever the West tells them to do.
Right.
They don't have their own interests they bargain for. They just sheep behind the West. All right. So I would respectfully say, please just leave the African Union out of it. They're completely
Exactly.
inconsequential. To answer your question, the European Union, the United States is a heavyweight on its own. I would say the reason why, again, if you connect something I previously said to right now, the reason is simple. We have been making mistakes in the way we approach these things. We have been giving them all the justifications in all the historical, legal, arguments why Ambazonia should be free. We're making that.
Yeah.
But we've not been hitting the nail on its head. Quid pro quo.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
right.
And
So,
again,
eh,
before you move on, let me bring this so you conclude it with that one. Do you think the sudden interest by the European Union, about meeting all Ambazonians or this kind of all Ambazonians meeting amongst the movement, do you feel it's like some kind of a sincere move, or is still that kind of a geopolitical performance that they are just trying to cover up or gaining strategic attention for the region?
very nice question. Yes, we're going to. I want the conversation to continue again after the hour. Let's continue. I think you're striking. You're now
Okay.
striking, very solid points.
Okay.
Um, yes, the it's it's political. I'm very careful with my words, and I want to make sure I use the right ones. It's what we call political positioning. Um, the Trump administration has cordoned off the rest of the world right now when it concerns
Right.
certain things. If you look at France's immorality in broad daylight in Africa,
Yeah.
countries like the United States have been shipping with that because they know about this immorality, but they do not want to hurt their French cousins.
Okay.
And so they have been pretending to go with it.
Okay.
But
But now,
Donald Trump doesn't care about those traditional alliances. That is why I will stand on rooftops and sing to the Ambazonian people. If you don't make good use of these 4 years, if you don't make
That's
good of these 4 years, then you have a very hard time after this.
that's
So
correct.
that is what we've noticed. The current administration in the United States doesn't really care about those traditional alliances.
That's
Now
right.
Europe is seeing the friendship and the inroads that the AGOVC is making into the State Department, into the US.
Right.
They are seeing that. And so they are panicky. Let's hatch a quick solution to the problem, because if America were to stamp its feet on this thing, then we are not going to be on the scene. You saw how the current U.S. administration was negotiating Ukraine with the Russians without the Ukrainians being there, without Europe being there. So
Exactly.
they know that he can do the same for Ambazonia.
That's right.
So all the much talk about, a unity conference and all that is simply hogwash. And by the way, last year about this time, the AGOVC was actively preparing that kind of a conference. We had the nod of the UK, we had the nod of the Canadians, we had the nod of the Belgians. We're really right up to that point. And a few people that we ought to have invited from Cameroun. Cameroun was intimidating them. If you attend that conference, you come back, we're going to lock you up. Stuff like that. So we were in the process of having that. So tell Europe, who agreed to that conference that AGOVC wanted to, hold at the time, to revert back to the AGOVC and tell the AGOVC and tell them to tell the AGOVC that go on with, that conference you wanted to organize. We're going to support it. Instead of
Exactly.
Instead of tiptoeing right now and trying to pretend that they want to organize, something in the name of talks. And by the way, we are telling Europe, you have no leverage whatsoever. You don't have the power to hold Cameroun accountable. That's the same thing. That's the same thing that the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation, Dr. Ayaba, told the Canadians when Canada was pussyfooting with Cameroun. Dr. Ayaba told them that Cameroun is going to dump you as the second girlfriend, as it did to the Swiss people. And it came to pass. And now we can still echo in the voice of the AGOVC that Europe, Cameroun is going to dump you.
Exactly.
Cameroun cannot dump.
It has never been known to commit itself to anything. Cameroun is not known for any commitment.
They cannot do that to the current Trump administration. He's going to asphyxiate Cameroun economically and financially. The US just needs to hit a hammer on the table and say, IMF, you're not giving no loan to Cameroun. And that's how Cameroun has been surviving, taking loans and paying civil servants. Just imagine they don't have that money. It's complete chaos for them. They will run to the negotiation table with their knees on the floor. So
and we are hoping and looking
we are working something out. We unfortunately, diplomacy is very painfully slow, but the Ambazonian people should understand that the AGOVC is working something out.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ambazonians, we don't disappoint. The leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation, he said he was going to give you a free homeland. That he would do with the wonderful and incredible team that is in place. And we work tirelessly. You might just see people once in a while, but know that behind the scene, there is a lot of work going on. And talking about the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation, let's talk about him. So, what is your own? Sorry, I have a very bad cough. What is your reaction to the fact that Norway, a country that before now you and I thought or we had celebrated for its human rights values, and currently it is detaining the leader of the Ambazonia War of Liberation for nothing but for as a human rights defender, a justice defender? Why nothing? They do nothing about Cameroun or hold Cameroun regime accountable for the enormous crimes and gruesome human rights violations they have been committing in Ambazonia.
Let's circle back to a point I made earlier,
Right.
um, about the French interest in those 14 African countries, and they are gradually losing grip. Mali has kicked them out, Chad has kicked them out, Niger has kicked them out, um,
Burkina Faso has done so.
Senegal, Burkina Faso.
Senegal.
Senegal is currently in the process of trying, but they're playing some really smart diplomacy with them. I'm sure they're going to kick them out as well. So by the end of the day, you
Guinea
see
as
that
well.
they have just like 6, 7 left.
Yeah.
And so they really need to play hardball in order not to let go of those that are left. Okay, so um, I told you how the United States has in the past been, playing romance with the French. They understand what the French are doing in Africa is completely immoral and unconscionable. And I'm speaking to you as someone on the diplomatic team. I hear their concerns in the US, what they say. All
Right.
right, I'll not say more than that. But
Okay.
previous administrations in the US, have been shipping behind the French. And so what has and that has hurt the United States a little bit, because the anger in Niger that the Nigerian people had with the French led to the kicking out of the Americans from their military base from Niger out of that place, right?
Yeah.
But if the Americans played politics with or diplomacy or trade with people of Niger on an equal basis, that wouldn't have happened. But now they're making Africans in general, lump every Westerner up in the same plate, that and it's unfair a little bit, right? Because if the United States wants to do business with you, they try to do it on a quid pro quo basis. But the French people will do that on a 99%, 1% for you basis. And our so-called leaders in Africa have sheep behind that for a very long time. So back to your question, the United States former administration, you know, decided to appease the French when Macron came begging, you know what, there needs to be some stability in Cameroon, our interest there, blah, blah, blah. And then the United States, corners the Norwegians. Norway knows
Exactly.
that Cameroon is unlawfully colonizing
Okay.
Ambazonia. They know that. Norway
Right.
knows that Ambazonia is rightfully fighting back, just as the same Norway fought against Germans invading their country back in the day. They know that. It's the same play. It's the same play. But again, like I said, the United States, with its weight, convinced the Norwegians to I'll just respect them. I don't want to use the word abduct. To arrest, I would have said abduct, to arrest a human rights lawyer Where in the world, apart from Iraq or Iran, Afghanistan, where in the
Right.
world do you arrest human rights lawyers? Dr. Cho Ayaba is a human rights lawyer par excellence, whose
Exactly.
only crime is fighting for
The
the
existence of
freedom
these
of
people.
his people. And then you
That's right.
arrest him. You know, the first lawyer who was given to Dr. Ayaba by the Norwegian, the first lawyer.
You're right.
I,
Stepper.
I, I, yeah, this is not classified. I'll just say this. So I was on that call when we had a meeting with that first lawyer. So I told him that what your country is doing to Dr. Cho Lucas is the same as this scenario. You know, they're very afraid of Russia right now. I say, if
Mm-hmm.
Russia, God forbid, were to roll their tanks over to your country, and your king and prime minister were to run into the UK, for example, and they ask
Done in the
the
past.
army in Norway to continue to fight the Russians, and because they said that, the UK government arrests them, would that be fair? And that's how the guy was looking at me like a dog watching TV, you know. So yeah, it's good to put these things out sometimes. So
Yeah.
it is the same situation. Dr. Ayaba has not committed any crime. The one who has committed a crime is La République du Cameroun, who in 1961 October went across internationally demarcated borders,
That's right.
both its tanks and military occupation and colonial officers, and captured Ambazonia, and has been in colonial occupation of Ambazonia to this day. Even in 1972, the United States Embassy in Yaoundé sent a facsimile to the White House and warned the White House that the issue of Southern Cameroon and La République du Cameroun was a ticking time bomb. P.S.
That's right.
That bomb exploded in 2016.
That's correct.
There was a political prophecy that came to pass. And I'm sure you must have read a specific quote from a former UN Secretary General who said, uniting Cameroon and Ambazonia together was like placing a balloon into water. One day it's going to come back up.
That's correct. Wow. I hope our
And
people are listening and learning. Really.
yes, and P.S. If what do we deduce from what that U.S. Embassy in Yaoundé said at the time, and the former UN Secretary General said? Simple. That you may chain a man, but you never chain their minds. You may
That's correct.
enslave a people, but you never conquer their spirits. You may continue to hold a people in bondage by force, but sooner or later, their anger and frustration become so great that force cannot contain that. Then the edifice
That's
cracks,
correct.
the mortar crumbles. The edifice has cracked, the mortar has crumbled.
That's
They
correct.
are running around helter-skelter, arresting people. Arrest Dr. Ayaba, arrest me, arrest whoever. That idea is never going to die.
That's correct. That's correct. Wow. Thank you very much for that, HHS. That was passionate and facts and somehow very encouraging. I mean, to anyone who is listening, and also very educative and informative at the same time. And I just wanted to talking about this Biya man. I'm just curious. His regime, despite decades of dictatorship and human rights violations.
Before we go to the beer equation, I think I had something to say regarding the arrest in Norway too.
Okay.
The intelligence of the Hague of Sea is still struggling to differentiate the hand of the Norwegian police cripples and the
Yeah.
Norwegian government. Because the intelligence we are gradually getting, it seems as though the Norwegian government may not be fully in support of that. That it was a singular action taken by cripples. You know, they claim that their different institutions are independent. So that is the intelligence we are getting right now. That the actions of cripples may not have been endorsed by the government of Norway. There
And
might
still,
have
so
been some disagreement, but cripples went alone, took the bull by the horns to go ahead and arrested Dr. Cho. They have combed everywhere. There is no evidence. That's why you saw at the last hearing in court,
exactly.
the judge presiding over the case warned cripples, I am inclined to release this man. You guys have been holding him for this number of months. I am inclined to release him. And cripples rebutted and said, if you release him, we will immediately file an appeal that will lead for his rearrest.
Okay. Now, this is where it's a little bit
Yeah, go ahead.
these revelations are very disturbing. For can tell us that the police or the investigation CRISPO is completely different from the government and can challenge the government's decision not to hold some. So what does this even mean? Is it that
What that means
is more powerful than the government itself, the judiciary?
No, in a country where you have a clear distinction of the powers of different institutions, you have a situation where the executive doesn't just have a field day. I give you an example. For example, even in Kangaroo, La République du Cameroun, when Chief Justice Aya Paul was appointed to the Supreme Court, he took his independence to the Supreme Court as an individual. And when the case against La République and Marafa Hamidou Yahya was brought up, he almost ruled that Marafa should be released. And because La République is a banana republic, there's nothing they can do about that. Let me give another example. Here in the United States, if the President of the United States were to appoint an independent thinking person to head the FBI, for example, okay, and the guy doesn't listen to the president, there's nothing the president can do. The only thing he can do is to fire him. Then look at the Supreme Court of the United States. Look at the Supreme Court of the United States, for example. There's one young lady that Trump appointed, right? But she's been voting against certain things that, goes to the Supreme Court that favors Trump. So in situations where there is some semblance of distinction of institutions, you can have very stubborn one or two officials who head certain places that will tell the executive to hell with you. I'm just going to do what I have to do. Please, hands off my area. You appointed me, fine, but just let me do my work. You have those kind of situations.
Okay.
I don't know what the
If
law
the
in Norway
studio
says.
can, if the studio can just bring us, on the screen the image of this prosecutor, this Annette Berger, that will really be, because we are not saying that the Norwegian, the police is really corrupt, because this is a form of conspiracy. They are working in collabor. Sorry.
Yeah, they're working in collaboration with France and La Republique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
So
to
yeah,
even to think
yeah,
that
that lady should be one of the most corrupt. Cripples
exactly
needs to be investigated, and that alone is going to tarnish the reputation of
of the
Norway,
Norwegian government.
especially
That's it.
as United States, not-for-profit organizations, civil societies are writing against the arrest of Dr. Ayaba.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
don't be surprised that in the next ranking of the least corrupt countries in the world, don't be surprised that you will not see Norway in the next ranking, because you have people
And
with
we
very
we
mighty
really
pens
want them to be,
fighting
yeah,
against those people.
because a lot of these developed countries, the so-called developed countries, the so-called human rights protectors, they hide behind these schemes, and they carry out the worst forms of corruptions because they have this cover and nobody ever exposes them. I'm glad that the case
Right.
of Dr. Ayaba has come up to really expose the dirt in Norway. And I'm the fact that we are just trying to distinguish in and take out the government from Crispos is something that I still will not want to, truly say they are completely separate. But this is what it is. But I'm so glad to know that a developed country that has received so many Nobel awards is being, you know, is has this level of dirt in them, and with this level of corruption, so the world can really see exactly what. And it's not the only one. Many of these countries, European countries, claiming to be human rights defenders and protectors, have the worst forms of dirt in their respective governments, administrations. So, and corrupt individuals. So everywhere they say Africans are the ones who are corrupt, they love power, and no, it's not just Africans. They too are very dirty. They're very, very, very dirty. And Crispos, and especially this lady, if the studio could just display her pictures for all to see, is truly a disgrace in that uniform. Clowns and disgrace in that uniform. So let me let me go forward to the next question that has to do with the regime, the Bias regime. In recent months, we've been hearing, you see people carrying placards and bringing up and saying, oh, they want Paul Biya to be, to still stand for the next election. And of course, his candidacy has been approved. But then I'm asking, despite decades of dictatorship and gross human rights violations, Pobia again is stunning. What and how the international community justifies the continued relation with such a regime, while simultaneously persecuting or isolating other dictators as well. How do you, I mean, I'm trying to use the right word. How do you even put this together? I can't understand it.
Amongst most activists, um, you know, supporting Ambazonia right now, I think I'm one of the only guys who played politics. I mean, active politics in La Republique. And
Right.
so I stand in good stead as somebody who understands the dirt and the high level of politicking in Yaoundé. And so thank you for that question. Now, what you need to understand is all those people who support Paul Biya is out of sheer greed. Out of sheer greed. People who cannot stomach, they cannot stomach hunger for just a little while.
Yeah.
You see these youths that they go and recruit in university campuses, these mothers They go into places and bring them. Go and stand on go and stand on the roadsides and clap. Deep in their hearts, they know that Paul Biya cannot govern. Deep in their hearts, they know that this is not a good choice. Deep in their hearts, they know that they as individuals can do a better job than that nonagenarian. They know that. But because Biya succeeded, Paul Biya succeeded to inflict, and is willful, to inflict poverty on the Cameroonian people. What are they left with? So these boys, these women, they wake up in the morning, they don't have 25, 50 francs to sweeten their Maggi, to buy Maggi and sweeten their soup. And then you bring them 5,000, 10,000. Just go and stand for 1 hour and clap. So that is what is happening. The level of poverty is smelling in La République. It's smelling. And
this is a strategy he has used to, to enslave his people and to keep them in
for a very long time. Yes.
Right.
But what about the so-called you heard me say they don't have the stamina to stomach hunger.
Right.
Because if you have the stamina to stomach hunger, someone comes and tells you something that is unconscionable, you tell them, go to hell. If you look at La République du Cameroun, they have the 1% development they have because of Ambazonia. I'm telling you. Because of Ambazonia. All the riots, all the political effervescence that took place in La République was thanks to the political awareness of the Ambazonian people. Ambazonians know how to resist. Ambazonians know their right. Mm-hmm. And they know how to, they know how to resist domination. Ambazonians have integrity. That's why you saw Justice Aya Paul dying on a sick bed and refusing to give up.
That's right.
Many people don't know. Many people don't know that after the 2011 presidential elections, back in the day,
right,
Paul Biya, through Gregoire Ewona, invited Justice Aya Paul to Mount Febe. We were there. This hoodlum called the prime minister right now, if Aya wanted it, they would have given him a not this guy.
Right.
They asked Justice Aya. Yeah, John Gute. They asked Justice Aya that Paul Biya had sent them, that he has one of the best ideas. Let him come into the government and help the government, through those ideas. And Gregor said, and I remember, même si c'est le premier ministre que tu veux. With the integrity that he has, he refused.
Exactly.
He refused. If it were some La Republican, he would kneel down on his leg, he would lie on the floor and say, well, you guys should give me tomorrow. Ambazonians, as per their culture, are people of integrity. You cannot, although you have 1 or 2 black legs, but the majority, you cannot hoodwink the majority.
That's
Just
true.
like the way Paul Biya is playing like Republicans, he cannot play Ambazonians. And he knows that.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
coming to your question, you saw how, so I was saying that the French has put Paul Biya, that's why they're indifferent. They have put, that's why Paul Biya will declare his candidacy. He will go in for elections and cheat. And the first person who will come to endorse the election results is the French.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you see another country that is not pro-France. They organize elections, somebody wins, the French will refuse to, congratulate, let alone somebody who is, seizing power through military coup. But that's who the people want. Some dictators need to be weeded out of power by force. And that is what the people of Burkina Faso did.
The first one. That's correct.
So
Wow.
Paul Biya has been in power for God alone knows how long. And the French have been in support of him. Why? Because he's a blockhead grandfather. A blockhead grandfather who would kneel down in front of his grandson, sacrilegious to the African traditions and customs. He will
Yeah.
kneel to his grandson, Macron. Because in our culture, an old man like that cannot bow to a young boy like that. That young boy should be
Exactly.
bowing to him.
Exactly.
A
Exactly.
disgrace, La Republic. La Republic people are a disgrace to Africa. Want him there because he is protecting their interest. Because the French are using him to pilfer resources from Ambazonia. He's the best. The day he stands up against them, number one,
That's it.
supporting the coup d'etat. Number two,
That's
they'll be passing around, they'll be
it.
pretending now and romancing with Ambazonia.
We know the politics now. Okay. Thank you very much, HHS. You're on fire. To be honest, I love the fact that you said no, they are blockheads and they are all cocoyams. Okay, thank you very much. And okay, I want to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, so you can also go about with different activities. But I want to ask you this: what will true accountability look like for the victims of Ambazonia, being the human rights chief of the Ambazonian Governing Council? Is justice even possible without acknowledging the systematic genocide underway in Ambazonia? What would you coin as true accountability for this?
When Ambazonians in Canada gave Paul Biya a bloody nose, and they jumped through the window and ran away from negotiations. The leader of the Ambazonia War of Independence, Dr. Cho Ayaba, had assembled a very formidable negotiation team. And those who were in Canada, Dr. Ayaba built a secretariat that would, be supporting those in Canada on a minute by minute basis. If there was anything in the hall that the AGOVC representatives did not like, they will step out and inform that secretariat. We will do research, discuss with experts, and give a reply.
Right.
So at the end of all of those things, when La République, all of those things are in writing. When La République you know, they were going through a lot. They were afraid that Yaoundé would collapse. There was some agitation, so they were scared that if La Republicans were those Janga people, they will never. They are so very. They are very. They are not brave.
Yeah.
But La Republique was scared that something could happen, and their people will go to the streets, and they will need military power to be able to contain that. And they don't have money for a strong military.
Exactly.
So they approached Ambazonia for negotiation. I'm talking, these things I'm saying is out of intel and out of what we, the intelligence we gathered, why Cameroon was interested in negotiation at the time.
Right.
It was two-pronged. One, at the time when there was this agitation of Ngongo taking over different factions, there was tension. They thought that, their country broke out into civil war. So they needed some kind of peace talks with Ambazonia to calm the tempers in Ambazonia so that if anything were to happen in La Republique, they will withdraw some of their troops to quell their own uprising.
Right.
So they wanted to deceive Ambazonia that, we are in some kind of talks. Don't be too offensive on the ground. The reason we came up with that thinking was because someone in La Republique told us that. And number two, we noticed at the pre-talks that Cameroon was only interested in ceasefire.
Exactly.
That's what they came up with. Ceasefire. Ceasefire. So
and that is a no-no for Ambazonia. And based on that, let me ask you this, HHS.
Dr. Ayaba, the political Maradona, he took that.
That one
Ambazonia
is a no-no. And based on the fact that you are literally leading the diplomatic team out there in the US, and as these talks have been last outing, that about the European Union coming together looking for all Ambazonian dialogue or conference, whatever the term is. What are the non-negotiables for AGOVC in any engagement? And how can we, as an organization, ensure that processes are not hijacked to silence the true resistant voices? You as the head of the diplomatic team in the US there, what are the non-negotiables for AGOVC in any engagement?
All right, I'll just put a question mark on the non-negotiable. I noticed that I did not land with your previous question.
Okay, you can land and then answer this.
Yes. So, what was the main point of the previous question? I just noticed. Okay, you talk about humanitarian accountability. Yes. So I was trying to set that foundation to let you know that that team that Dr. Ayaba put in place, we had accountability as one of the first things on the table. All right. All those who have lost loved ones as a result of the war, all those who have lost loved ones as a result of the colonization from 1960, from 1961, there is going to be, Cameroon has to pay one way or the other.
Right.
So it is not going to be an end of war, both parties go their separate ways. No, there has to be accountability from Cameroon. If not, then Ambazonia will have to seize part of Douala and get that money back.
Exactly. For every tree that they destroyed, every home that they burned down, for every animal that they killed, for every...
There is going to be accountability. We will say everybody who lost loved ones
Yeah.
during the war come forward.
Properties.
We need their names, we need their documentation. Anyone who lost property during the
Right.
war come forward. So we'll document all of those things, quantify those things in monetary terms, and we are going to chase Cameroon in courts around the world until they pay, including seizing the planes of their president that this guy is owing us. Seize the plane.
That's correct. Yeah. That's good. Okay. And on the issue of
So the
non-negotiable.
the other question, the non-negotiables. All right. So again, like I said, in diplomacy, what we are learning in diplomacy. So there are certain things I cannot say here about non-negotiables, but every Ambazonia understands the non-negotiables. Let me just leave it at that. Every Ambazonian understands the non-negotiables. I'm speaking in coded language. I'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, because certain experts and certain officials are advising that even if this person says that, you know, the trick is to bring them to the table.
Right.
Yeah, the trick is to bring someone to the table. When they come, the door will be locked. They don't know how to go out.
I have a terrible cough. I don't even want to bring it out right now. So, I love that last part. We die here. Nobody goes nowhere. So, let me ask you this. For our people watching tonight, right? So many are heartbroken, so they are tired, they are hiding or are in exile. What message do you have for them? What hope can you offer them in the midst of all this darkness?
Yes. The first thing I want to say to, rekindle people's hope is Ambazonia is going to be free. Period.
Amen.
Ambazonia is going to be free. Trust your leadership. Trust what people are doing. It's just TV. It's just TV. I have gray hair already. Most of my hair is gray, but I don't know why it's not showing on TV. And I've started putting black on my hair. So that is to let you know that people are up every night strategizing. Cameroon cannot defeat us in terms of strategizing. Those guys are blockheads. They know nothing. You know how a fool would take a sword and going like this, and then the smart guy will just bend down and throw the man down. So that's how La Republique is. That's how they are. They know nothing. They have nothing in the head. So trust in your leadership. The Ambazonia Governing Council, you hear Dr. Chuayaba, you hear Dr. Ni, you hear these guys speak. These guys are people who have surrounded them with the best minds, best nationalist minds. It's not a matter of just having a best mind, but somebody who knows that either Ambazonia or nothing else. So please, we know that this thing is psychologically draining, financially draining, it's leading to deaths of people, but we cannot turn back. Ambazonians, we cannot turn back. Not at this point when Cameroon is almost collapsing. I tell you a little story. Please, PS, if you will permit me.
Please go ahead.
Back in the day, I just completed high school, and I had a very close friend. We lived in Victoria, and one sunny afternoon. You know, we used to frequent these cyber cafes, apply for scholarships and all that, just so some, you know, university around the world is going to, you know, listen to us and then grant us scholarships. So one very, very hot afternoon, we did not even have taxi fare to pay taxi to go to the nearest cyber cafe.
Right.
So we're trekking under the scorching heat of the sun, swiping and cursing beer, cursing everything. We're walking under the sun. There were two routes we could take to get to that cyber cafe. One route was the longer one. We had to walk longer miles and more, you know, minutes under the sun or hours under the sun than the other one. At that time, cyber cafes were just coming up. It was very difficult to find them in town. So the other one was the shortcut. Wanted to reduce maybe like 30 minutes being, you know, walking under the sun. So we decided to make a decision. We took the shortcut.
Okay.
While we took the shortcut, just a few steps to the gate separating us from this compound from the other compound where the cyber cafe is, the gate appeared locked. It appeared locked. And we froze instantly. Who is going to go back again and turn around and use the longer one? That would be another 1 hour under the sun. We almost gave up. I told that guy, he was just in front. I told him, it may appear locked, just try to push the gate. As he pushed the gate, it was not locked, it was open. Wow. And so when he pushed it, it was open. We're just there at the cyber cafe. I can imagine the relief. It was a very big relief for us.
Yeah.
Ambazonians, I'm telling you this story because you are at the point of independence. You cannot now turn back. Mm-mm. If you turn back, you become slaves. You know what Honorable Weaver said in Parliament? That Cameroun did not conquer us in war. What does that mean? It means that if you are conquered in war, you become the property of the conqueror. And therefore, if the war ends today with victory for Cameroun, God forbid, you would have been conquered at war. And whatever they say, you have to shut up. Whether they give you roads or not, you have to shut up. Whether you have water or not, you have to shut up. You are a captive at war. That is what it means. And therefore, we cannot
spoil of war.
Yeah, that's the spoil of war. You cannot turn back, Ambazonians. You are at a point, just like us, when you have to push that gate open. And whether that gate is opened or not, if you push and that gate is locked, we will climb over the fence. If the fence is too high, Ambazonians, we should parachute in. If there is no parachuting, we will pole vault in. Ambazonians, whatever it takes, let us reach.
Burn down the whole damn gate. Yeah, burn it down. We'll dismantle it. Right. Thank you very much, HHS, and thank you so much for that incredible story to encourage our people, because sometimes our people feel, like I said, you feel the silence, the tiredness, the pain, those in exile, and you can feel, you really understand what they are going through. But by telling them this story, they understand that there is nothing good that always comes easy. And at the point, at the verge of victory, people always feel tired. You just need that one extra push, and this is what you're telling them to do. That last push. This is what we need for the war. So, Mr. Raymond, in 1 minute, give us your closing remark. It has been an honor.
Thank you so much, PS. It was a very big honor to come to your show. I know in your show only very big people come. You hosted really heavyweights. That's why when you kept extending the invitation, I said, oh, what does this lady want to do with a small me like this? She's already had very big people on her show. So thank you. It's an honor for me to be here. I have a message for Ambazonians and people who claim to be Pan-Africanist. There is a group of Ambazonians who say that, if we divide, we are tearing Africa apart, stuff like that. If we divide, we are dancing to the tune of the colonialist. I have one message for them today.
Right.
And that message is, it's a small story about our culture. If you look at Manu, Lebialem, and most of northern Ambazonia, you have situations where you have the head of a house. The head of a house has two wives. He builds a house for the first housewife and another one for the second. So this family is staying here happily, and this other family is staying here happily. So two different families. Now, if the first wife, because she's so blockheaded, a foreigner comes into her house. The foreigner deceives her to go to the other house of the other lady, beat up the kids of the other lady, rape them, and maim them, and steal from them, and want them to be perpetually in economic and financial and political slavery. If you are that second wife and the children, you don't want to fight back because you think that that other one is your brother. You think that if you fight him, you are going to be you are going to be playing to the tune of that white man. Then you'll be mumu. If you sell your rights, your economic, financial, and political rights to a foolish, stupid, blockhead brother, then that's your problem. For me, for the AGOF Seas, and for the Ambazonians who've decided to stand up, they have said no to La République and the corrupt francs that La République is using to come into our house, rape our women, steal our resources, and the one who keep us in perpetual slavery. Never, never again with this generation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Conson Raymond. Thank you. That is the head of the Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs Department of the Ambazonian Governing Council. Thank you. And studio, if you can pull him out, I will conclude and we will have it a good evening. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you for taking our time to listen to us. I hope you were encouraged. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope that you are not giving up anytime soon. So as we close this important conversation, we are reminded that the crisis in Ambazonia is not just a political conflict. It is a human catastrophe. Because behind every statistics lies what? A shattered home, Behind any of those figures that we mentioned today lies a silenced voice. Behind any of the statistics we mentioned today is a murdered child, a burned school, a grieving mother, a burned community, and a street flooding with blood. The horror is real, fellow Ambalanders and viewers, and yet the world remains largely silent. Today, we've heard not only the cries of people under siege, but the resilience of a nation that refuses to vanish. Ambazonia has refused to vanish. Cameroun has done everything to vanquish us, but we have refused to vanish. From burned villages to diplomatic boardrooms, Ambazonians are standing, not as victims, but as a people asserting their right to live in dignity, freedom, and in peace. To the international community, your silence is complicity. That is a fact. Your double standards are glaring, and it has cost a lot of lives in Ambazonia. The blood, the voices, the cries of every child, every woman that has been spilled in Ambazonia is in your hands for being an accomplice to a regime that brutally murders, rape, maim, and destroys. You cannot preach human rights in one region and ignore genocide in another. That is the height of hypocrisy. The people of Ambazonia are watching. History is watching. And to our Ambazonian brothers and sisters, from ground zero to the diaspora, we say, stay resolute. Dr. Chua Yaba says, no blinking. He says, shake, shake, no day. Stay resolute and steadfast. Stay unbroken. This struggle is just, and the justice always finds its way. The night may be long. If you're a Bible student, you will know. The night may be long, but the dawn is certain. This is not the end. It is a call to conscience. May this interview awaken not just anybody, but let it really bring awareness and for us to take action. God bless you. God bless Ambazonia. Thank you for watching. God bless our prisoners. Those are brothers and sisters that are today then called prisoners. Our brothers and sisters that are today referred to as refugees and internally displaced persons. God bless and continue to protect you. For our heroes on the ground who continue to fight to defend our homeland, we say, God continue to protect you. So short live the struggle of Ambazonian people and long live Ambazonia. God bless you all.